Picking the right pair of boots is one of the most important things you can do as a snowboarder, to the extent where if you pick the wrong pair of boots, it can affect your whole season. One time I was riding the wrong boots and it gave me a bone spur that made it so I actually couldn't ride for multiple weeks on a time, and it actively made it one of the most painful years of my life. So fitting and picking the perfect pair of boots is one of the most important things you can do. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through everything I learned about picking boots over the last 18 years. And I've learned a lot of cool tricks and techniques for selecting the perfect pair because I got some wonky looking feet. And yeah, we're going to break this video down into 5 parts, and that will make it easier for a specific section because we're going to be covering a lot of information, giving you everything you need in order to go and make the boot choice that'll let you ride all day with no pain. So let's get right into it. First thing you want to do when picking a pair of boots is make sure that you have a general sense of the size of your foot. Every boot fitting shop will have these tools, and usually there's also boot fitters that will help you do it. And a really important thing to note for this is every board company's boots are going to fit slightly differently. So here I'm measuring at a 8.5. It's also really important to measure the other foot because you can have 2 different size feet. 8.5 here, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be using an 8.5 boot. For example, I ordered a pair of 32s at 8.5 and they were far too short, to the extent that riding them caused me permanent nail damage and I just could not punch in the toes. So that's why we're going to go really in depth into the fitting and how they should feel for length and width. Because that's the other part about snowboard boots is the width of your foot. And you can see that you can measure it. And the most important thing for this is each boot model is coming in a different width, and some boots actually come in a wide form and just a normal form. I have really wide feet. So you can see that my feet at the balls of feet really come and spread out here. This means I'm going to need a really wide shoe. And this really narrows down the amount of boots that I'll be able to get. So you really want to be mindful when you're picking your boots. Is your foot wider? Is your foot more narrow? Generally, if you have issues with just putting on normal shoes, it feels tight, you probably have a bit of a wider foot, where if you can just buy like any pair of Nikes off the shelves and they feel great, width-wise, then your foot's probably more on the normal side. Because every brand fits so differently, it's really important to not be brand loyal or just buy boots without trying it on. Anything like reviews, it all depends on your personal experience and how that boot fits specifically for your foot, because it's not just about size. Here, let's go and find a boot to go and try. We will try on this DC 9.5, so a full size larger than what I normally ride. And this is just going to help me go and tell you what to look for too large of a boot. So whenever you're trying on a boot, it's important to do the full tightening process. I have skinny calves, so I always need to do this part extra tight, and I'm actually always looking to see how big of a gap I have here. Too big of a gap before the shin, it's going to increase the chance of shin bang. And we just want to tighten it all the way up before we can get an accurate feel. So on my left foot, I have a snowboard boot that's one size too big, and on the right, I have my liners that should be the perfect size. So what I'm feeling on the left is first, a lot of heel lift. This is a great indication that the boot's too big. And when I'm feeling towards my toes, when I'm standing tall, my toes aren't touching the end. And when I push forward, my toes aren't touching the end. For width, what you want is to have your toes slightly touching the end as you're standing in your stack strong position, just brushing a little bit. And then as you put pressure onto your shins, this will go and push your heel back, and you should feel it come away from there. I generally ride slightly larger boots than is necessary. So my feet are like borderline 8.5 and I just ride at 8.5. And this is because you just really don't want your toes crunching into the far end. If your toes are crunching into the end, they'll start curling up. So any kind of toe curl is too much. Boots will punch out a little bit. They say half a size, but you really need to make sure that you're not coming in with that full crunch toe because it's going to be too much to actually go and punch out. What I'm also feeling with this DC boot is it's just too narrow. Because I have a wider feet, I'm feeling pressure on that wide point of my foot. And because this is a step-on boot, I can actually feel my foot digging into that step-on point. One of the most important parts of picking boots is making sure that you're not having your foot squished. Because I have wider feet, when I get certain boots, my feet will be squished like this, and that's making it so you're trying to stand on your not flat out foot. You want a boot that lets you go and have your foot come and expand. So this boot, I can already feel that it's tight. I'm feeling pressure here, and it's going to be pushing my foot. This leads to your feet falling asleep super fast and making it so you can't ride for a very long day. It's a really good idea to go and try on the liners of the boots if you're not sure about the size, because they give you a lot more accurate of a feel. So here I can feel with my fingers in my little crouch position, where are my toes, and there I just have a little bit of room. And if I stand up straight, my toes are just slightly brushing the end. That's absolutely perfect. And then when I look at the width of them, I can see that my feet are pushing out the sides a little bit, and that's normal for me. But we don't want to have our feet going and pushing out all the way. We want it to be generally in line, because these boots, especially the stiffer they get, like the Burton Ions, aren't going to really want to expand and let your foot out. So if you're going and expanding through the liner and pushing past the liner, you're going to be getting some resistance when you actually go to put on the boot. So the perfect boot has your toes slightly brushing the end when you're standing tall, and as you put pressure into your shins, your toes come away from the end, giving you a little bit of space. And for width, your foot can fully expand out sideways, and you don't feel it coming, compressing, and making it more narrow. By far, the most important part about choosing boot is the fit. What we're trying to get with a fit is making sure that we have no strange pressure points on our foot, and really importantly, we don't have a lot of heel lift and foot movement in the boot. I like to think of it this way. When you're in your boot and you're just moving around, picture snowboarding, picture jumping. When you're going and riding, you're constantly doing little motions, you're constantly lifting, you're constantly crouching. So if you feel your foot trying to lift and come out of a boot during any of that process, that's going to start rubbing, and that can lead to a serious bone spur. So on the left here, just by going and trying to like pull my foot out a bit, I can feel that it's really loose, and I feel like I could almost like pull my foot completely out. On the right here, the boot that's properly fitted is nice and stiff. I can shift forward, I can shift to the side, I can rotate, and it all feels secure. We're trying to go and get our foot into the feeling that's like socketed in there and it's not lifting at all. There's going to be a little bit of heel lift, like if I go and keep my boot on the ground here and I try to like tear my foot out, I will be getting a slight lift. And this is where how it's holding your foot down helps. If when you're trying to lift out, you're getting intense, sharp pressure around your ankle bone, it might be relying on that a little bit too much. So these boots I really like because it surrounds the whole foot and it loads the heel into the back there. So when I try to do any of my movements, my walking, I'm secure. So try this test out. First, you want to just start with some normal walking. If you feel the boot coming up and lagging behind you a little bit, it's probably too big, it's probably not fitted right, and you should go and try a different one. If it passes that test, next we do the little bit of squatting and leaning. Does it handle the pivoting well, or do you feel your foot shifting back and forth? From here, we can go and increase the intensity of this and try to do full squat downs to full lift ups. You want to feel like your boot is trying to keep your ankles down. So on the left here, when I do this, I feel like my ankle's lifting, pulling up and extending. Where here, when I try to lift through, the boot's actively trying to suck my heel back in. If it passes that test, it's time for rotation. When you're snowboarding, you have a ton of rotation in your hips. And if you're starting to rotate your hips and you feel your foot sliding to the side, ankle caving in, that boot's going to be too loose. So what you want is to be able to add this full rotation and have the boot feel like it's molding onto you. So what you want is a boot that can do all of these motions with feeling snug, without any pressure points and not loading the weight and pain into any specific point. And I'd highly, highly recommend, when you're feeling good about a boot, to buy it and bring it home and wear it for at least 2 to 3 hours around the house. I even go and will buy like 2 to 3 boots at the same time, try them all on, and see which one I like best. Because sometimes you'll mold into them, and there's things you can do like heat mold the boot to make them fit a little bit better. But once you do that, you're fully committed. But you can always go and try on the boots at home, feel around, and bring them back as long as you don't take them outside. And it's one of the most important parts about choosing the perfect boot. The last part about getting the right fit is the arch support. Your foot has this little bit of arch, and some people have lower arches where their foot's like completely flat. Some people have high arches where it's completely up. I like to get these super feet for it because they give you a little bit of arch support, what lets your foot not go and get compressed when actually snowboarding. I also really like the little bit of arch support because it makes it so my foot doesn't spread out and pan out as much. They make these in low size, high size, medium, and you just want to find the one that's feeling like it's supporting you, it's there, but it's not actively pushing into your arch because that'll lead to some pain. Pretty much anywhere that sells these will go and have someone that will help you fit them, figure out which one works best for you. And same with boot shops. We're at Showcase here and they have really good boot fitters that will help you answer a lot of these questions and go through this process. But choosing your boots is an independent experience and they can't feel what's going on. And you're the person that needs to ride the boots. So get advice, get help, but make sure to try on as many boots as you possibly can and put them through the test because a good pair of boots is going to make a big difference when you're trying to go and get a lot of days on the mountain. Now let's talk about the different stiffnesses in boots and what benefits they have and what downsides are associated with them. So first, most companies make a soft boot, and this will be their cheapest boot. For Burton, it's the Ruler, and it's just much more crunchable, much more pliable, and because of this, it's going to be a lot more comfy on day one. A boot like this is generally designed to do like 30 days on the mountain. You can push it to 60, push it to 80, but they start to get very UGG-like, I like to call it, and soft. And you know a boot's getting close to done when you can actually warp it in and like fold it on itself. These come already able to be folded in on themselves, so they're very soft. A good boot if you're just trying to find something comfy, if it works for you, but you need to be really careful if not using these for too long because if you start sliding, get loose, you're going to start getting those pressure points. One year, I didn't buy new boots at the start of a season and I was riding size 9 instead of 8.5 Burton Rulers. I rode 12 days in a row at the start of a season and I got the most ridiculous bone spur on my ankle. I just iced it every day. There was 2 weeks where I couldn't even put on a boot. So making sure that you have a boot that's relatively fresh and firm enough is really important. So these are good for when you're learning for all that kind of thing, but you're definitely getting less quality and less longevity with a lower price range. Next, they have their Burton Photon, which is a little bit stiffer, a little bit more pliable, and this is my favorite boot that I actually use, and you can see it's much harder to fold into itself. This boot will last more like 40 days, but still doesn't last that much longer. The benefits of a slightly stiffer boot is that it's just going to not go and get molded, and it's going to give you a little bit of ankle support. So this is a really happy middle ground. And then every company also has their most expensive boot, and normally this will be the stiffest boot as well. So for Burton, it's the Ion, and this boot is an absolute tank. It actually folds a little bit easier than the Photon because of how it's seamed, but don't let that fool you, this thing is ridiculously stiff. These are designed to last like 60 days on the mountain. You can go and push it longer. Obviously they have their shelf life that's recommended, but I generally try to get like 80 days to 100 days on the mountain in my boots because they're expensive, and the Burton Ions are definitely significantly more expensive. So even though these only last 30 days, these last more like 60 days, with the price range you end up getting the similar amount of time for boot ratio. The benefits of a stiffer boot to this extent is actually quite significant. So if you're riding like any chop, any powder, it's going to really help give you ankle support. And the biggest example I have for this is for freestyle snowboarding. Sometimes you'll land like this, and this is called crunching the ankles, where all the impact comes 90 and the ankles get crunched down. When you're in a really soft boot like the Burton Ruler, it's not going to give you any support. So as you get crunched, it's going to really hurt you and you're going to take all that pressure into your ankle. But something like the Ion is so stiff, the boot itself will absorb most of that impact, really protecting your ankles. They also make it more stable. It's like the difference of riding a really stiff board versus a super soft board. The soft board is more playful, more comfortable, easier to move around in, but the stiff board is going to go and help you charge through the chop. It's going to keep you more powerful, and it's not going to let you go and hit any weird funk. So I only use my Burton Ions a few days a year when I'm riding the biggest jumps possible because I find these really painful. They're a little bit too narrow for my foot, my feet fall asleep, so unless it's a really cold bluebird day when I'm planning on going absolute ham, these stay in the closet. But what I do love about these is the liner. So if we go and compare the liners of the Burton Ions versus the Burton Photons, this liner is just so much better. So with the higher quality liners, you're seeing a lot of things. We're seeing more foam, we're seeing more support around here, more shaping, where this is sort of more like a sock. This is going to wrap around your shin way tighter, suck in your ankle way more, and give you way more support. And it's to the extent that I couldn't really use a pair of boots without these better liners. So I actually just swapped my Photon liners with my Ion liners, and I'm really emotionally attached to these, so I keep my old Ion liners and keep using them throughout my boots because they last a pretty long time. The most important thing about boots isn't necessarily the stiffness, the type, it's really about how it feels. If you get a softer boot because it's the only boot that works for you, just know that you're going to need to replace it sooner, and you can't go and push it too many days because you'll be risking some serious injuries. That's why a middle ground stiffness I really like. Something like an Ion is too stiff for me to enjoy. Anything like riding powder or just having a fun time on the mountain, I'm in too much pain to do so I normally go with the Photons, but really just is personal preference. Trying all the boots, find what fits best because that's going to really what help you progress. And then if you are riding like really massive jumps or really gnarly features, you should go and get a stiffer boot because it will help protect you and keep you safe on the mountain. Boots have different styles of lacing systems, but I'll only ever recommend the double bolus system. It lets you go and keep adjusting your tightness, get them tighter, and instantly loosen them off, giving you serious control about the tightness of your boot and also letting you get instant relief, and you just really can't beat them. There is a system called quick lace system that you'll see where you like pull it tight. These are trash, do not buy them. Those strings snap all the time and they're really hard to replace. The last system you have is the lace system. Some people really swear by the lace system because it lets you get the tightness exactly where you want it. The downside is it's really hard to get that tightness, and I've never once seen a lace boot rider that's managed to go and get enough tightness at the shin of the boot. And I personally like not having massive calluses on my hands and can't tie a knot for the life of me, so laces are not a question. So the boa system is just the most adjustable. Quick lace system, don't use. Lace system, if you're really confident of tying knots and you love tying knots, give it a go. On to just general tips and little tricks that I think make boots more comfortable and better to ride. First, you want to do your boots up while standing up. This just makes sure that your ankle is locked in there. Then you want to try and make sure that you're getting it nice and tight around. I have really skinny calves, so I'm almost maxing this out, but you don't want any gap between the felt here and your shin because it's just going to increase shin bang. Then personally, I keep my liners pretty loose. If I tighten these max, my feet fall asleep pretty quick. So I like that a little bit looser. And then I keep the tightness more tight on the exterior to make up for it. A really important thing I'd note for this is I never can get my boots tight enough just when I'm putting them on. I generally have a free run system where I'll do one run with warm up where my boots are a little bit looser, tighten them a bit, I do another run, tighten them a bit, and then my third run, I get them to the maximum tightness. Because I find if I just try to go straight to getting them as tight as possible, my feet just completely fall asleep. And that brings me into my last tip. Don't wear your boots too much. Ideally, you're going to find a comfortable boot that you don't need to take off and you want to wear all the time. But the longer you wear the boot, the faster it's going to break down and the more likely you are to build a pressure point. I know some people that will wear the boots all day and it can result in some pretty gnarly things. So I generally go to the mountain in different shoes and I take off my boots as fast as possible. It's a little bit inconvenient, but increases the longevity of the boot and it goes and keeps the health of the foot. So when you're going and wearing your boots, it's definitely something to keep in mind. Every company makes a good boot that's going to be perfect for someone. So don't buy a boot based on an attachment to a brand or what you read on the internet. Go in, try on every single boot you can and find the boot that works for you. And doing so will make it so you have a lot more foot health, and that's going to make it a lot more fun to tackle a mountain. If I missed anything in this video, let me know in the comments below and we'll be back at it with another one soon.